Syracuse football needs a quarterback in the transfer portal. It might just be Liberty's Kaidon Salter.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, on today's show, we are talking about a potential Syracuse football quarterback transfer portal target. That's right, Liberty's Kaidon Salter. I'm going to give you guys a little bio about him. He was great in 2023, not as good in 2024, but there's a reason for that. That's what we're going to talk about first. We're also going to talk about the scheme fit. And spoiler alert, guys, Syracuse is going to have to change their scheme in order to fit a guy like Kaidon Salter in. But I'm not against that necessarily. Okay, I'm not against it. Finally, at the end of this show, yay or nay? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we want Kaidon Salter or do we want to go with a different quarterback option? That's what's coming up on this edition of the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We know that Syracuse football is in the quarterback market. Unfortunately, Kyle McCord, he was amazing for us in his one season with Syracuse. And yeah, he still has a bowl game if he chooses to play in the bowl game. He's got a future in the NFL, so either way, I don't blame him. But he's not coming back next year. He can't. He's out of college eligibility. That means that Syracuse football needs a quarterback. We have already talked about at length that they need to go in the portal to get one. And in my opinion, it could be Kaidon Salter. Kaidon Salter is 6'1". He's 195 pounds, and he was the quarterback at Liberty, the full-time starter over the last two seasons. He is a dual threat quarterback, which I will explain later on in this segment, and he's got 1 year of eligibility left. So I know I already have said that my preference is 2+ years just to have the certainty, but I would rather a 1 year transfer quarterback than start the season with an in-house option. So I'm okay with a 1 year transfer just like Kyle McCord was. Now, there's got to be a reason why I'm bringing up Kaidon Salter, because he is actually one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks available, and I think a lot of teams are going to want him. So the reason why I'm bringing him up for Syracuse is because On3, which is a major recruiting site, has linked Syracuse and Salter together. Now, that doesn't mean whether or not that Syracuse has expressed interest. Doesn't mean that. But if On3, a major recruiting site, is linking those two together as a possibility, that means there's got to be something. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be some sort of conversation. I don't know what from which side, though. Just want to be very clear. But that's why I'm bringing up Kaidon Salter. He is a legitimate rumor. He has been connected to Syracuse via On3. So, what is it about Kaidon Salter, okay? What should you know about him? Should he, tomorrow when the transfer portal opens, decide, I want to play for Syracuse, I don't want to wait for anything, I'm going to sign on day one, okay? Here's what you need to know. Basically, a tale of two seasons. 2023, absolutely spectacular. He was the Conference USA MVP for the season. In 14 games, Salter threw for nearly 3,000 yards, 32 passing touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, a 32-6 touchdown to interception ratio. I call that pretty good. What do you think? That's pretty good. 32-6. That's even better than what Kyle McCord was. And he also had a completion rate at 61%, which is not great, but if you're a dual threat quarterback, just get above the 60 line, which is exactly what he is, because Kaidon Salter in 2023 ran for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. So 32 passing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns. That means Kaidon Salter in 2023 had 44 combined touchdowns in 14 games. You do the math. That's over 3 a game. He's pretty good, guys. That was 2023, and he led Liberty to a 13-0 record. In fact, if we're talking about the current college football playoff format and not last year's, the 14 playoff, I believe that Liberty would have made it. I believe they would have been the Group of 5 conference champion representative. You can correct me if I'm wrong, though, but I'm pretty sure it would have been Liberty at 13-0. However, they did lose the Fiesta Bowl game to Oregon for what it's worth, so they finished 13-1. I don't think we're going to hold that against Kaidon Salter or Liberty for losing to Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. But then 2024 happens this past season, and there was regression. There was. And the question here is, why was there regression? Is there an excuse? Is this a red flag that we should take seriously? Because it is a red flag that he regressed from 2023 to 2024, but we have to understand why the red flag occurred. Now, before I get to that answer, I'll tell you what his numbers were. He played 11 games, so not 14, but still okay. What did he do in those 11 games? Well, he threw for 1,900 yards, which is less per game than in 2023. So less passing yards per game. 15 touchdowns in 11 games. Not terrible. And 6 interceptions. So still not mistake prone, but his completion rate dropped to 56%. That's not very good. You want to be at least at 60% as a dual threat. And if you're not a dual threat, then you're looking at 64, 65, 66%. He was at 56 as a dual threat. Not very good at all. He ran for less than 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. He actually averaged 2 touchdowns total per game, which is not bad, but not the obscene total he had the year before. And so I did some digging, and I tried to find what was the reason for this. What was it with Kaidon Salter? Was it maybe a coaching change? Nope, it wasn't a coaching change. He had the same head coach. He had the same offensive coordinators. They have 2 offensive coordinators at Liberty. And he had the same passing game coordinator. So to my knowledge, based on the fact that there was nothing changing with the coaching, there was no schematical change here that led to regression. But there was a change in personnel, a big change in personnel. And that is the fact that his top receiver from 2023, CJ Daniels, he transferred in the offseason to LSU. CJ Daniels at Liberty in 2023 had over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He had more than double the catches and the yards than the next highest Liberty pass catcher. He was the dominant number 1 target for Kaidon Salter, CJ Daniels. And for what it's worth, by the way, Daniels had 1 season at LSU last year, and he's back in the transfer portal. Hint, hint, that's coming up later on in the show. I think it could be a good idea to pair the 2 up together. That's all I'm going to say about that. When a team like Liberty loses a top talent, they can't just go into the well and they'll be fine. Right? We got to be honest. I'm not disrespecting Liberty, but there is a difference when you're a team like, we hate the SEC and everything, but when Georgia loses a player, their guy waiting in the wings the following season is probably going to be pretty good too. Same thing with a team like Bama or a team like Texas. You get all of that. When Liberty loses a player, when they lose a 1,000-yard receiver, they're not getting elite high school recruits. They're not getting elite transfer portal guys. So it's very difficult for them to replace a number 1 wide receiver like Daniels, like CJ Daniels. It's hard to do it for them. And they didn't. They didn't replace him one bit. In fact, all they really did was try to promote from within, which obviously hurts. So I think that's really why Kaidon Salter's numbers took a dip from 2023 to 2024. Is it a red flag? It is. Is it a guarantee that if he were to come to Syracuse that he would regain the form of 2023? It's not a guarantee. But I'd be willing to bet that if you gave him a little bit more around him, he could be a lot better than he was last season. And he still, for what it's worth, wasn't terrible. He had a low completion percentage, but he averaged over 2 touchdowns a game, and he was still a dual threat guy. So that's a little bit about Kaidon Salter, the Liberty quarterback who has been connected to Syracuse via On3. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you want Kaidon Salter as the next quarterback of Syracuse football? He's got one more year of eligibility, and he's a dual threat quarterback. Speaking of dual threat quarterbacks, we know Syracuse's scheme, and if you don't, I'm going to explain it to you in the next segment, so don't worry. How is he going to fit with the Orange? That's coming up next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite, and right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com, plus store an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. And on today's show, we are talking about Liberty quarterback Kaidon Salter potentially being a fit for Syracuse football. I just went over a brief bio of him, why he regressed from his awesome 2023 to his not bad, but certainly not as good 2024. And it's really because he lost his top pass catcher in CJ Daniels in the transfer portal. On3 is linking the two together, Syracuse and Kaidon Salter. Does he fit Syracuse's scheme? That's a big question that I have. Here's my take on this. He's a dual threat quarterback. Kyle McCord, obviously not a dual threat quarterback. If Syracuse were to get Kaidon Salter, let's say they get him, okay? If they were to get him, they have to build their offensive scheme around him. This is not a situation where you can just plug and play and put him in the offense that Kyle McCord ran. That's the job of a head coach, right? Is to either you're going to have a scheme and you're going to try to find players that fit the scheme, or you're going to work with what the personnel you do have and build a system that works for them. And with Kaidon Salter, you're going to have to do the latter. You're going to have to build a system that works for him because he is a dual threat quarterback. Think about Kyle McCord for a second, okay? Offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon built the perfect system for him. They maximized what made Kyle McCord so effective. He's got good accuracy. He's got good sense of the pocket. And he can get rid of the ball on time. And as a result, Syracuse this season, they ran a spread offense. A lot of 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets. And they relied on a short to intermediate passing game where Kyle McCord would step up to the line of scrimmage in the shotgun, survey the defense, figure out his best course of action, and basically make the read before the play even starts because he needed to get rid of the ball quick. It was like 2 seconds or less. And it was highly effective. It worked. They didn't really call any design runs for him. There was maybe that one play against Boston College where he did tuck it and run. And the other times he did run this season were mostly on scramble drills. With a guy like Kaidon Salter, he is someone that's going to rely a lot on his legs to make plays. He is someone that's going to want to extend plays. You don't want to pigeonhole. You don't want to pigeonhole him. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole if you are putting him in the Kyle McCord system. You have to build the Kaidon Salter system. So if you're Syracuse and you're willing to do that, then by all means, it would be great. But if you're trying to find a replacement for Kyle McCord that plays like Kyle McCord, Kaidon Salter is not the guy to do it because he is someone that really does rely on his legs a lot. So when I look at this, honestly, you have to kind of build an offense for him that's similar to Garrett Schrader, the quarterback before Kyle McCord, which, by the way, this staff was not here for Garrett Schrader. And I think that Salter is better than him for what it's worth. But that's essentially what you're looking at. A lot of design quarterback runs, a lot of read option plays, even triple option plays. Syracuse football with Kyle McCord would run RPOs. An RPO is a run pass option. It means that when Kyle McCord gets the ball, he has the choice to either hand it to the running back, which in most cases was LaQuint Allen, or make a quick throw. They didn't really do the triple option. With Kaidon Salter, they can do a triple option RPO, where Salter can be in the shotgun and have three choices. He can throw it, he can hand it off to his running back, or he can keep it himself. I could see Syracuse doing a lot of that with Kaidon Salter. At the end of the day, this is just my opinion on this. I want Syracuse football to get the best talent and build around the talent, rather than let's get the guy who fits the Kyle McCord system the best, because you might be then missing out on the better player. Now, you could totally disagree with me on this one, and feel free to let me know in the comments section below, agree or disagree. Would you prefer the better talent, or would you prefer the lesser talent, but someone that fits the scheme better? To me, we're in the offseason right now. I know we got a bowl game, but it's December. The next meaningful game for Syracuse is in late August against Tennessee. You got a ton of time to build a system if you get Kaidon Salter. So there's, to me, no real excuse to not do it because you don't think of the scheme fit. Now, if you think that it's almost like if there's a tie goes to the runner. If there's someone in the transfer portal you deem is similar talent or is the same talent to Kaidon Salter but fits your scheme better, fine, by all means do that. I prefer that option. Similar to I would prefer a 2+ year transfer, all things being equal. Kaidon Salter is a 1-year transfer. But is everything equal? No, obviously not. You got to look at the talent. You got to look at the scheme and everything that would fit with him. With Kaidon Salter, if he is the more talented quarterback available, I think if you're Syracuse football, you go get him and you build a system around him that works. You just did it with Kyle McCord. I don't see why you can't do it with Kaidon Salter. You can still kind of run a spread offense. It's just there has to be more designed runs involved. There's got to be a little bit more, not to say less, there was creativity with Syracuse's offense, but it's going to be a little bit more unpredictable. That's the bottom line with Kaidon Salter. So I really like it. I really like it, provided you put him in a system that works for him. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts. I know he doesn't fit the Kyle McCord scheme well, but do you still want a guy like Kaidon Salter, a dual threat quarterback for Syracuse football? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, coming up, we're going to give a final yay or nay. Do we want Kaidon Salter or should we look elsewhere? That's what's coming up next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. I have been teasing for quite a while the ACC Championship game. It was last night. It was terrific. Clemson was a 2.5-point underdog, but they get the last-second win over SMU. I am recording this minutes before the college football playoff standings are released, and I'll just say this for the record. SMU should be in the playoff. No questions asked. We already know that Clemson gets the auto bid. SMU is a playoff team, and hopefully, they're in. But anyway, let's talk about FanDuel here. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Yay or nay? Do we want Kaidon Salter in the transfer portal, the dual threat Liberty quarterback, or should Syracuse look elsewhere? Now is where I give you my final thoughts on this. I'm a yay for this move. And the more I think about him, the more I watch his highlights, the more I study it, the more convinced that I think this guy could be really good. I'll be very happy if they can get Kaidon Salter in the transfer portal. I don't think it'll be easy, but if they can get him, it'd be great. But again, it does have that condition from the last segment that the Orange don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. They have to build the system around him. That's the condition. I was a little hesitant with Kaidon Salter at first. I'm not going to lie. When I saw that Syracuse was connected to him, I was a little hesitant. I didn't know. I saw the regression. 2023 to 2024 are two completely different quarterbacks. One quarterback looks like if he was playing on a Power 4 team would be in the Heisman conversation. The other quarterback looks like just he's okay. He's fine. Really? But when you look at the big picture, it makes a lot of sense. It's a program like Liberty. They lose their number one wide receiver in CJ Daniels in the transfer portal to LSU, if I might add. It's not like they're going to get a crazy transfer or a crazy high school recruit to replace him. And they didn't. So I understand that there was regression with Kaidon Salter because of that. I'm willing to make a bet that that is why he regressed, and less so because he forgot how to play football, which, by the way, this past season, he wasn't all that terrible. He wasn't all that terrible. He just wasn't as good as in 2023. Also, I teased this in the very beginning of the show in the first segment, but Syracuse doesn't have Jackson Meeks coming back. He's out of eligibility. He was one of the leading receivers for the Orange this past season. And CJ Daniels is planning to enter the transfer portal. I think it would be a good idea to pair the two together. They had success at Liberty. Obviously, the ACC is a little bit different than Conference USA, but there's familiarity there. He knows him. So I could see the two being a package deal. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I can see the two being a package deal, and it would make sense that you pair the two together. When I look at his floor-ceiling combination, I think this is ultimately why I'm a yay for the move. Let's say the floor happens. Okay? Worst case. He's basically former Boston College quarterback, now in the transfer portal, Thomas Castellanos. I don't like Thomas Castellanos. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I am definitely a nay on Thomas Castellanos. I don't like him at all because he can't really throw. He's just not very good, in my opinion. I've had plenty of words to say about him. I don't think he's very good. But here's the deal. If you get Kaidon Salter, having said that, and that's the floor, is Thomas Castellanos, okay, that's a pretty good floor. Because if you get him, you're probably a bowl team with him. Probably. Not guaranteed, but probably. Because Thomas Castellanos can get you to a bowl. He just can't really do much more than that. He cannot really elevate your team. But he can get you to a bowl. Same with Kaidon Salter, if we're talking about a floor here. The absolute worst case scenario, provided he's healthy for a whole season. He's Thomas Castellanos. Not very accurate. He can run for a good amount of yards, make plays with his legs, and hopefully just not turn the ball over a ton. And you're hopefully 6-6. The reason why I don't want Thomas Castellanos is because there's no ceiling. There's no ceiling with him. But with a guy like Kaidon Salter, there is. There is a ceiling with him. Which is that if he's closer to what he was in 2023, where he was almost 3,000 yards, 44 combined touchdowns, passing and rushing. You're looking at a player who, I don't know if he'll be in the Heisman Trophy conversation, but could be on the level of where Kyle McCord is, even though they're two completely different quarterbacks. But what I mean is the level of where Kyle McCord is and where we think of him in college football. And he could lead the Orange to another big year. He could, if he is the player that he was in 2023. So I see a floor of Thomas Castellanos, which isn't great, but you can do a whole lot worse for a floor, and a ceiling of someone who could elevate Syracuse once again to a 9-win season, which is what they just had. So that's Kaidon Salter from Liberty. Overall, I'm a yay for the move. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Taking everything into account, the fact that you're going to have to change your offensive scheme, the fact that you're banking on him returning to the player he was in 2023, the fact that it might be a package deal with a guy like CJ Daniels in the transfer portal once again, leaving LSU. He was the top receiver for Liberty in 2023. Taking everything into account, yay or nay? Do you want Kaidon Salter, or do you want to see what else is out there? I'm a yay for Kaidon Salter. If they got him tomorrow, I am okay with it. I am good with the move. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, so I am recording this at actually noon. So the college football playoff is about to be released. That means that the bowl announcement, I don't know it at the time of this recording. We'll know it by the time you're watching this or listening to this, but I don't know it right now at this moment. So coming up tomorrow, I think I'm going to do a mini reaction to it. I don't think I can do a full podcast on the bowl game, but I'll do a mini reaction to it. My thoughts on whatever bowl they get. I'm already crossing my fingers. It's not the Pinstripe Bowl. And then the full podcast tomorrow, we are talking about another quarterback that is linked to Syracuse football in the transfer portal. So those are the two things that I have planned. On Tuesday, I think there's going to be a guest on the podcast, and you may remember him from last April. I'm bringing him back. He had some takes about Kyle McCord and Fran Brown. That's all I'm going to say. I invited him back. I think we're going to make it happen on Tuesday. Stay tuned for that. Also, Albany post-game for basketball. They're not very good. You know my thoughts by now if you have been watching and listening to this podcast for a while. If you have not, maybe this is your first episode ever. They're not a good basketball team, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to watch and recap every single game for you guys. So that's what you got coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.